Welcome in New York. Welcome to episode 127. We are live here at Citi Field just after the Colorado game has ended. Obviously, it did not go the way we wanted it to, the way anybody wanted it to. Vibes are different than they were when we showed up to the stadium. Despite it being kind of rainy, chilly day, we still felt pretty good about the opportunity to get a result. Colorado had Mihalovic out. We had Talles back from injury. It felt like there were a lot of things kind of swinging in our favor. The Citi Field vibes in general are usually pretty good, and it didn't end up the way that we wanted it to.
No, I think it definitely felt like there was close to no chance that we were going to come out of here with nothing, and that's exactly what happened. I mean, early on, it kind of felt like a sucker punch. It felt like, against the run of play. Despite what I was hearing from the Apple TV commentators, the NYCFC was not dominating, but controlling the game for sure. Definitely on the front foot, and Colorado was doing a good job at just defending and booting it forward and kind of getting on the end of chances. So super frustrating. And then obviously at the end, the dagger goes in, and at that point, you see people start to dip out.
You're right, though. So for halftime, we go into halftime with like 65% possession to 35. A lot more shots than Colorado, and they were just kind of playing that counterattack ball. And for whatever reason, that works so well against our team. And I don't know if it was just the personnel that we had out there today with our lineup. I think they were identical to what they were last week. We had Hannes in, we had Ojeda in, we had Alenich, and last episode we talked about how there were a few players that we think probably weren't prepared to be on the first team at this moment. In my opinion, that would be somebody like Ojeda, and I think that was our first inkling of worry before the game had even started. Just like, why is Ojeda starting when you see the lineup drop in? Ultimately, I think he goes on to have a pretty poor performance as well, and in a way that has an effect on the players around him. I think Alenich was struggling, having Ojeda as his partner ahead of him, and he was getting into some dangerous areas, but obviously the decision-making was not fully there. There was probably an opportunity that Baki should have gotten that it makes sense why he came off and he was as frustrated as he was. Because I felt like the delivery that he typically gets and then he screws up on was not there.
Yeah, no.
And that obviously, and then when you get taken out, you probably feel personally liable, and maybe this was a situation where he felt like he was doing things right, and for the first time it wasn't necessarily all on him.
Yeah, and it was just frustrating. Like, I could understand the frustration with Santi, Munsef. A lot of these guys were super frustrated when the final whistle blew, just because the way that Colorado set up was super frustrating. Like, I almost intended, I'd say, to make NYCFC upset, to make them not be able to do what they want to do, which is to play, pass between each other, open up opportunities. That just wasn't a thing today. Like, you could take screenshots of when NYCFC is on the attack and is disjointed, while Colorado is very much in like this block that is just completely locking down the goal. Mm-hmm. They executed their game plan, and that's the story of it, really, and it just sucks because we wanted a result.
And I felt like, coming out of half, this may be the earliest subs that we ever saw Cushing make, which is a positive, and we can talk a little bit about Malachi too. I think he would be the other guy that we would speak about in the same light as we did with Ojeda. But outside of that substitution, I think Perea for Keaton made a ton of sense for the game and how it was going, and kind of what we were seeing from Keaton and what we kind of needed out of our midfield. And the same thing with Tavon coming in for Alenich. Obviously, Alenich having those troubles with decision-making and just in general dealing with the wingers of Colorado. I think it was a bit harder probably for O'Toole with Cabral than it was for Alenich on the other side, but he was also just having trouble defensively. So Tavon kind of did help shore that up, and there really wasn't a loss of attack, I think, with taking Alenich out. Tavon today served in probably 3 crosses that should have been cleaned up
maybe
one way or another.
Maybe his best cross ever for us.
For Malachi. He puts it on Malachi's head, and I think if you're Malachi, you probably can't see anything in your field of vision that isn't a goal at that point, and somehow it ends up going wide, far post, and that is kind of the moment where it kind of solidifies things that we've already talked about on this episode, where a guy like Ojeda and a guy like Malachi probably should be playing all available NYCFC 2 minutes if rules allow it.
Right.
Because it's it's at a point where they're clearly not necessarily first team ready, whether that's confidence wise or just ability wise in general. And I think you mentioned it while we were watching. Once Malachi kind of has those troubles with the first two headers, the lack of confidence that he was showing on the ball afterwards, he didn't want the ball.
Yeah.
I think he realized that he had kind of thrown the moment, and especially being at home and doing that in front of fans affects you mentally. And for the end of that game, he was affected mentally by that.
Yeah, and I don't know if he had the idea to go for goal, but then he was like, no, this should be going across goal. Like, you really don't know the thought process there. It just seemed like maybe he was caught between two minds in the moment and not really making that killer decision. It's super unfortunate. But those are the dudes that we had out there. Me personally, and I know you agree as well, I think that sub should have gone to Julian much quicker, or Alonso, one of the two. Needed to be coming on much quicker.
Yeah, we can't let Cushing off the hook for, as much as we're talking about Malachi and his inability, or what we feel is his inability or unreadiness, maybe we should say, to kind of fill those first team minutes. It is highlighted by the fact that Cushing is the one that is accepting that, whether or not he accepts that as a truth, he is still putting him in those positions, and that's kind of what he's proven thus far. So I don't want to let Cushing fully off the hook for that. I think there's no chance when your winger options are Thales Magno today, for the first time ever, we haven't even touched on that, Jason, Julian, Alonso, and Malachi, that out of those 5 names, it almost feels like he pulled one out of a hat. And he was like, okay, it'll be Malachi then. And he didn't really put thought into it otherwise. Because there's no chance you're not going to put in a Julian who has an assist last game and goals in both games prior to that.
Yeah, it didn't really seem like I had much thought into it. And the other annoying part about today is the fact that the players seem to not want to use the middle of the field. They didn't want to play directly through the middle for whatever reason, even though there was so many times where there was so much space in the middle, to the point where you have to think Cushing told them to only go through the wing.
Avoid, yeah. You would have to think...
play through the wings entirely and not move through the middle, because it almost seemed like they were afraid to do it, even though there was huge, huge areas of space. If you pass in and make the run, the classic what we've done all season, and then all of a sudden we're constantly spraying the ball out, which... cool, that's if Tavon can hit the ball, or if O'Toole can hit the ball and find somebody in the middle, cool.
Right.
But it didn't happen.
And for the whole first half of the game, before we get, I guess even longer than the first half of the game, before we get some of those tall guys in like Julian, the wing play is kind of silly. It's for your whole game plan to be playing crosses into like a Santi,
or
Baki,
Ojeda.
and Ojeda.
How many times did the ball get crossed from Olenek and it's going to Ojeda?
Yeah.
It's like they're just harebrained in a way.
And I think you're right. The seemingly the team avoiding the midfield to that degree, with all of them doing it, and that being kind of against what we've seen for the rest of the season, does feel like it's a game-specific tactic that would have come from Cushing, and this would have been something that was drilled in training during the week. Yeah. And I personally don't think there's a player on Colorado. Maybe we didn't know that Mihalovic was going to be out, and we wanted to avoid putting the ball around him, but in this case, it was really poor tactically to come in with that idea in mind, because it was wrong too, because there was the space there, and
there was
for whatever reason the players listened rather than doing probably what they felt was natural.
That should have been an adjustment at halftime that happened, where you're going, okay, there's so much space in the middle. Yes, let's continue to try to work through the wings, but if you see the space, use it. Yeah. That's my biggest thing. And that's my biggest annoyance in watching any team, let alone this team, is when people don't take the space that's given to them. You saw moments where players were running away from goal as opposed to running towards goal. These are all little things that great teams do, and the reason why this team isn't great right now.
It was definitely annoying to watch. It was the
worst game to watch this season.
But that's true.
It was the most frustrating game to watch as a fan.
It felt like the players in general, the starters, and even the subs that had come in, like there was such a lack of fitness, which I'm not sure where that comes from.
The last time we played was Saturday, and this is Sunday. It's a whole extra day.
And we're energized after 3 straight wins, 5 unbeaten.
Should be at least.
Should be. It's hard to put a finger on what would cause something like that, but it sucked to see. I think Santi especially, he looked pretty unfit. Keaton had to be taken out, which is something we don't see. He's one of the minute leaders on our team. So I'm interested to see if anything comes out from Cushing on why that decision was made. Outside of just trying to put Perea in there, who did look better, at least defensively, for us at the end of the game.
Yeah, so I don't know. That game was super frustrating. Please get us on to the next game. It's one of those things where I feel like Cushing right now in the press conference is saying like, yeah, the boys just want to play next week because we want to go out there and get a win. And cool, that's cool, but just do it.
We have Toronto next, Toronto away. Obviously not
Should be a big dub.
A team that we haven't seen before, but I believe they're also on a bit of a stretch that we were just on. I think they have 3 games straight won, and then they have the thing that might be on our side is they have the Canadian Cup, where they played a midweek last week and then they play midweek this week before.
Is that like their FA Cup or their
I
Open
couldn't
Cup?
tell you. I think it is, yeah. It is like their Open Cup because they were playing a Canadian Rovers and they beat them like 5-0. So they're clearly not opponents worth respecting if you're an MLS team. But they had that midweek and they have this midweek, and I was trying to poke through the lineups. It looked like they were playing at least some of their starters, so maybe we get a fitness advantage, but I really don't know if I can say that after us getting an extra day and coming out here looking tired than we would with a shorter break.
Yeah. What do you think the magic touch for this team to go and get that dub would be? What's the change, like the lineup change, tactic change? What's going to make the difference?
I'm kind of I think we both probably like the idea of putting Baki in a position where he's coming in as a substitute, at least for a game. At least to give him a change of perspective in the week leading up as a sub, just kind of shake up whatever routine he currently has. And I know Jovan, it was mentioned pregame that he had picked up a heel injury in training, so that's why he was out of the 18. But
put Alonso up there.
Yeah, we're now in a position where we do have a third guy that is worth putting in.
Yeah.
Considering the production that we've seen from him and the production that we've seen from Abaki or Jovan, that are other options. So on top of that, they've said that Alonso has been undergoing, I don't know if it's like a full position change type training, but he's been training with the forwards as opposed to kind of more of a winger role, which is something that I guess he's done in the past.
Okay.
So I think you put your money where your mouth is, and you just allow the guy to go out there and do that, because it can't be worse than not having a goal scored. You know,
right.
That's where we're at now. So like if we remain there, you know, it is still shitty, but we're not losing anything by doing it. So I don't know if you differ at all on, or if you agree with that and have an additional thing that you think, but to me, I think just having that clinical striker up top is really kind of what it takes.
I think it's a little bit of composure. These players seemed to lack composure today specifically. Whether that was decision making, you know, not to harp on him because I think he had overall a decent game, but there was a few decisions, like his decision to shoot on his left foot instead of pass it to Baki, his decision to continue dribbling and not play it into Munsef on his right foot. You know, just decisions here and there that just were not there. They weren't showing composure or confidence. If they, whatever they have to do, see their therapist, have like a team meeting, team lunch, whatever it is, do that this week, because we need composed, clear-minded players.
And I feel like giving a fan talk the same way that Cushing would probably give a team talk, in the way that we did just come off a 5-game unbeaten run, 3 wins in a row. That's something that hasn't happened in 2 years. And obviously I think for us the loss is pretty fresh. We're literally removed probably 20 minutes from the game at the moment. So it is fresh and it sucks. And I think sometimes we have a bit more time when recording to kind of take it in and look up the positives and try to find those and share those. But at the end of the day, losses are going to happen at times, and it especially sucks a lot when it happens at home. But realistically, like if we get a result against Toronto away, whether that's 3 points or a point, and we just have to kind of make sure that we're not delving too far with the depths and like going too high with the highs.
Definitely.
Because I mean, 3 wins in a row, 2 draws, 5 straight on a 5-game homestand, losses will happen.
Yeah, I think part of it is, when you look back at this game, it's hard to pull a single positive from it. And in losses, those are definitely going to happen, but you want to at least be able to say, you know what, this is something that we can take and learn from. It seems like there's nothing from this game that is worth taking and building on or learning or anything. Like, this was a complete dud. I couldn't point out a single, like, Santi's body language is horrible. It seemed like he was genuinely bothered by the other team, which is something we've talked about not happening this season, all while everyone in the fan base is thinking, hey, this might be the next captain. That shows me there's still work to be done, which, like, you don't want to just throw everything that he's worked on to become who he is now out the door, but, like, you cannot have that body language as the captain. You cannot be just oozing, like, negativity. It cannot happen. So I literally can't. I cannot find a positive.
I think I could think of one.
Go, shoot.
Thiago.
Thiago?
You know, and it is, let me preface myself that it is tough to stand up a captain center back when your team loses 2-0 at home.
Correct.
But I'm willing to go out on the limb and do that.
He
because
was better.
Well, last week he was good too as well. And I think we touched on it. You definitely touched on it last week. But, you know, we probably didn't say enough that obviously he gave up the goal in the first 3 minutes. But I think outside of that, when you then go on to play a 87-minute game, I mean, didn't we have the 10-minute halftime stoppage time, and then we had 6 minutes stoppage time at the end. So this dude went on and played, you know, probably an additional 90 to 95 minutes of really good football in a game where he led as the captain and we won a come-from-behind victory at home.
Right.
So, you know, I think there will be mental errors that happen, but aside from that, aside from last week, I think today he looked kind of up to the task too, and that is tough when you have the 2 goals go in, but there really wasn't a moment, especially on either of those goals, where there was something that he did wrong that specifically led to those moments.
The second one, the dagger, was a complete sell by Sands.
Yeah.
Not his fault at all.
I don't know how much I would have to rewatch it, but I don't know if the pitch played a role at all in that. I know obviously
I don't know.
The dirt underneath the grass today looked like shit.
Yeah, they had to completely redo it at halftime.
Yeah, it looked horrible, and I think he slipped kind of right on the edge of where the sod over the dirt met the outfield. So
I'd have to see it.
But regardless, not a good look. And then him kind of tracking back and missing the opportunity to stop it in a second attempt. Yeah, that's a tough look for Sands, somebody who has otherwise been kind of
pretty solid.
A very solid member of our midfield.
So you're giving your star of the game to Thiago?
My star of the game, yeah.
Okay. I would say my star of the game was probably Hannes.
Okay. That is not at all the way I would go.
It's probably Hannes. Because, like, above all, he showed crazy effort.
Okay.
Crazy work. Yeah, no, he just showed a lot of effort, a lot of work. He wasn't ideal on the ball, but I think above all, like, he put in a lot of effort. He put in a good shift. Mm-hmm. And I'd start him next week for it.
That's fair.
That's fair.
And is that not a new segment, surely?
No.
We
won't remember to do it. If you make a new segment in this show, we'll forget it the next week.
Yeah, there will not be a star of the game next week.
Somebody run just go through every episode and see how many new segments we started that were 1 week long. All of them.
So, yeah.
At least talking right now, like you obviously knew before we were recording. So I was just ready to go to bed.
Just pissed off.
Like, I was just ready, honestly. If my night was over at 5 p.m., that's just what it was. But no, this is podcast like therapy, and we just get to get that out.
That's why we do it.
Yep.
So that's 127. I think we have probably tougher than most people would assume at face value game against Toronto. But I hate to put shit in absolutes, but like we should be getting a point from that game at the bare minimum. Just to kind of build as much momentum as possible heading into the gauntlet that is a Philly away and then a Derby at home. Because we obviously need, fans on our side. We need momentum on our side. You pretty much need everything on your side for games like that because they're going to be chippy. If you thought Santi was pissed off today, we're heading into a territory of chippy Santi that probably hasn't been seen yet this season with Philly Red Bulls back-to-back.
Yeah, and I'm interested to see what he said in the scrum downstairs because I can't imagine he was happy. Can't imagine he wanted to stay long. So
yeah,
we'll see. Hopefully we get a result, and we'll see you guys after Toronto. Follow us anywhere that you get a podcast. Follow us on Twitter. Sure. You want to shout out the FIFA winner?
I was going to say, we should probably talk about that. I completely forgot that we had hosted like the first event that we had ever hosted just because of the anger that watching the game had created. But yeah, the FIFA tournament that we hosted, obviously you guys would have heard about it. on any of our socials or on any of our past episodes as we called it out. I think it went as perfect as we could have wanted an event to go, aside from you not winning the whole thing.
Correct. A perfect tournament would be me just beating everybody that comes in.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, FIFA's FIFA, and cheese is going to happen, and things that are not in your control happen. So you end up losing.
But shout out Muerto, NV. I had to Google it. Muerto means dead in Spanish. So obviously a bit of a mysterious persona going on there. But they won themselves 2 games to Citi Field. I don't know if the camera could see it, but I think it's right back there in that section, kind of near the supporters. So decent seats. Obviously a derby is an entertaining game, regardless of how it goes. At least the lead up and the anticipation and the anxiety.
With it being at home too, it's a very good chance of us winning.
Yeah.
What I will say is congrats, obviously, for winning. You're lucky that you didn't have to play me in the final, because I would have given you sick work. But there's always next time.
I was going to say, maybe we just double or nothing.
And next time, obviously, there's going to be more people, just because this worked out so well. So I'll be able to get more dubs and go from there.
And I think if the universe allows it, if the powers that be allow it, we're eyeing some larger games. I mean, the derby is obviously the home derby of the season is obviously a massive game to go to, but we have things like Philly at home and Miami at home left. And I think those are the types of matchups that we would be eyeing for a future tournament. So look out for that. More information to come if there ends up being any to share. But otherwise, we appreciate you guys for participating. We appreciate all the different podcasts and pages that kind of helped share out our registration information. That way we could get all the players that we did. The community definitely feels, I think, like a big family at times, and that was one of the times where it shone through pretty hard. So we appreciate that. Appreciate everybody that listens, and we have to give the listeners a word to comment below the YouTube video if they are true and have listened through the end of the episode.
Dumb anger.
Dumb anger. How about nah, I have nothing.
Stupid anger.
How about no? We need something better. What about just plain? I don't know if they can hear. I mean, one issue, and if we'll continue recording episodes, I think at the new stadium in here, is there are no less than 30 planes that have flown over our heads while recording this, and I have no clue if you guys have been forced to hear it the entire time.
Hope not.
So plane or JFK.
L audio.
L audio. No, maybe don't comment JFK. I know YouTube's.
They'll think we're on some conspiracy.
On some conspiracy.
We're going to see people talking about JFK.
Conspiracy is the word.
Conspiracy
is the word. So if you listen this far, we appreciate it. Look out for the comments. And get back to you guys after Toronto. Hopefully it's a little bit better than this game.
Get a big dub.
Yeah.
See you guys.
Peace.